the episode in which we get into cookbook publishing questions and comments over the past few months. Welcome to Everything Cookbooks, the podcast for writers, readers, and cooks. I'm Kate Leahy, and today I have everyone. I have Andrea Nguyen, Molly Stevens, Kristen Donnelly. Welcome.
Hello.
Hey, Kate.
Hello.
It's great that we're wrapping up season 8, but first, we just need to clear the air. Molly, can you just fill us in on what happened to our inbox?
It wasn't our inbox. It was the contact form on our website, where if you go on our website, it says contact us, and there's this very nice little page that says, you know, if you have a question, a suggestion, something, you fill out the form and you hit submit. Well, they used to come right through to our regular Gmail account, and somehow they were being redirected into spam, which I had not checked. No one had checked in quite a while. And as you know, your settings on Gmail, they get deleted after 30 days. So a listener finally got in touch with us and said, you have not responded to my emails. And so I went and found months and months of a backlog. I was able to find them in storage on our website, which was great. So I have gone through them as best I could. I'm sorry if we didn't get every single one, and we have corrected the glitch. So now the contact form does work and we're back on track.
We're back on track.
Sorry about that.
Thank you, Molly, and thank you to the listener who flagged this for us.
Yes, absolutely.
We were definitely mortified.
Yeah, I was like, gosh, we're not hearing as much from our listeners.
Yeah.
So It was a bit of a bummer, but I think we're out the other end. So we thought we'd use this host chat to go through some of those questions and comments that we've received.
Right. And I thought this would be a good opportunity also to talk about cookbook publishing in more general terms for listeners who might be newer to it. So there's some questions towards the end of the episode that delve into that. So stay tuned for that. But first, I thought we'd talk about a couple of corrections and criticisms. One of them is something that we talked about, I think, early in October. We were talking about AI, and we said that the New York Times sued Anthropic, but it's actually OpenAI and Microsoft. So we wanted to clear off. Sorry for that error. That was Christina Felix who pointed that out. But what was great is that Christina also said she's keeping a close eye on this because she's a New York Times contributor. And she fills out a form declaring she won't use OpenAI products to develop recipes. And I thought that was really interesting.
Oh, that is cool.
Yeah.
So in general, apologies for that. We are not OpenAI / Anthropic / legal experts, but please, keep a close eye on that if that's something that you're faced with. And I think we're all kind of facing what's going on in AI these days. The next comment, it's about copy editors. We've got a couple of comments in the past that we are a little negative on the copy editing process. Perhaps that is true the way that sometimes, when you're an author and you approach copy edits, you're exhausted by that time. Maybe our patience is a little thin. But I want to say, I am so thankful for copy editors.
And I also say, if we express some negativity or negative feelings, it's about the process, not the individuals, not these experts who are doing this really important work. It's not a personal attack on copy editors, right?
Right.
No.
Yeah, and finding a copy editor who understands your subject and your cadence and works with you, that's a dream.
Absolutely.
But there are so few copy editors out there because honestly, they're not paid well enough. And I think that the parameters that copy editors are put under the stress of working very tightly and just hopping right into a project and having to wrap your head around a subject that you're not familiar with and a voice that you're new to is very difficult. But it sometimes works out beautifully and it sometimes doesn't. My first copy editor taught me so much, and I waited 20 years to be able to work with her again on the latest Thai cookbook, and it was fabulous.
Yeah, I've definitely been saved many, many times by copy editors and also proofreaders.
So explain the difference between those two, Kristen.
I guess we should talk about, there's the editor and then the copy editor and then the proofreader, right? So editor often is the person who acquires the book, not always. They're usually doing that first initial pass on edits where it's structural, we're looking at the structure of the book. Some editors will really get into the line, others not as much. I think it also depends on maybe how much work the prose needs, but the copy editor is the one who's getting like granular. Yeah. I mean, in the recipes, but also in the copy itself, you know, fixing grammar issues, noticing all the inconsistencies. Like, I feel like that's such a big part of it. Is like, over here, you talked about using the masa harina this way, and over here you did it this way. And is that on purpose? I mean, the best copy editors will say, is that on purpose? I will say I've worked with some people who really, it's just like consistency. I prefer when people query a consistency issue rather than
change it.
Yeah, make an assumption, just because there might be some slight nuance why it's different.
For example, you might call for low sodium chicken broth in a recipe, but for another recipe, you might not say low sodium because it doesn't matter for that particular recipe.
Yeah,
and a good copy editor will say, you know, do you want low sodium chicken broth used every single time you're using a store-bought broth? Or is this intentional that you want low sodium here?
That's a great example.
But you know what you just rattled off, Kate, like for someone to type all that up in a comment in words.
Yeah.
Instead of just delete.
I mean, it takes a lot. Then the author goes in and responds. And that's a lot of typing. So it's a very delicate, very complex situation, and it can be mildly frustrating, it can be very frustrating, but it's part of the process. And then there's the proofreader too, and then there's also someone called the managing editor. Mm-hmm. The proofreader is going to come in later on while you've got everything in layout and takes a look at things to make sure you get fresh eyes, all your T's are crossed, your I's are dotted, and all that good stuff. And the managing editor, I'm a little unclear. But the managing editor is also kind of like interfacing with the words and design and making tweaks and stuff, right?
Well, it could be a production editor. I think it depends on the house.
Yes. I mean a production editor, not a managing editor.
Right. I think a lot of times what a production editor will do is take a Word document that's been copy edited and then go through and put in the code. So when the Word document is flowed into InDesign to be designed, the sidebars are already appearing as sidebars. The ingredient lists are already appearing as ingredient list. So it's a really technical side. And this is why authors out there, when you want your last minute change where you decide you need to add this recipe or subtract this recipe or move something big, it leads to headaches, and it also can introduce errors that weren't there early on in the process. So if there are big picture things, that's why that the main editor, the acquiring editor, or the person doing the developmental edit, if you want to move a chapter, that's the time. Copy edit stage, it's doable, but it's not comfortable. By the time you get to the layout, don't do that. Don't do that. Like you're probably going to have to trim, but you're not necessarily going to make wholesale changes.
Yeah.
So anyway, copy editors, you need them.
Grateful for all of them.
This is how a cookbook is made. It's all the nitty gritty details.
Right.
God, so many moving parts.
So many moving parts, so many people. And that's not even talking about matching the photos to the recipes. A proofreader can look, well, you say cilantro as a garnish, but in the photo.
I never hear that from a proofreader. Girlfriend.
Oh.
I think I have, now that you say that. I have been asked that before, those kinds of questions.
I try to cover my butt beforehand.
Yeah. It's rare, but it happens.
Yeah.
We will be digging more into the copy editing role in future episodes. If there are questions about how books are made that you really want us to address on our podcast, now that we know that our email is working, send us an email and we can try to get those answered on future episodes. Moving on to some of the questions that Molly received through our website, I wanted to address a great question from someone who's a cookbook enthusiast. She's been toying with the idea of making short videos of her cooking or baking a dish successfully from someone's cookbook. She wants to know what kind of permissions might be involved in something like that. Can she do a video and show the book? And if she did that on social media, would she need permission from the publisher or the author or both?
I mean, people do this pretty frequently, and it's usually very appreciated by the author. If you feel squirrely about it, you can always just ask. But yeah, as long as you give the proper credit and the fact that you're showing the book, I mean, to be honest, it's almost like a promotional.
Yeah. I'd welcome that. And I loved people cook from my books all the time, and sometimes they show videos and show tweaks, and I'm always saying to people, I want to know how you make my recipe yours.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I know there are creators who do this, but one who comes to mind, she was doing it consistently for a long time, is at Kitchen Bookshelf. Her name's Tara, and she does a beautiful job with recipe videos, all from cookbooks, and she shows the book and everything. What she doesn't do is share the full recipe often, and that might be where you start to get into some legality things, especially if you do it more like multiple recipes from a single book and you're printing the full recipe. But if it's literally like just showing how it's done, and it's nice.
If you're a content creator and you do something like that, then also, you're going to give a shout to the book. Let people know how they can get a copy of the book themselves. They can go to their public library, they can purchase it at a local bookstore, then go to their preferred online vendor, whatever. But I mean, that's always appreciated by the publisher as well as the author.
And there's that YouTube couple that reviews cookbooks, and they cook from cookbooks, Cult Flav, and they're very, very popular YouTubers. So Virginia is the listener who asked this question, and you could look and see what they do. I mean, they cook actual recipes from the books, a number of them too.
Right. And then one thing that can happen if you really get into this is you could become sort of like a book influencer, where at that point you have enough followers, you can, like, publishers will start reaching out to you.
Yeah.
Because it's a big movement in publishing to promote books of all kinds through people who are sharing the books through their social media platforms. So keep doing what you're doing. We appreciate it.
Especially if you're liking the recipes and positively reviewing them. Authors will be even happy. And not to say you have to, but
I know Tara from Kitchen Bookshelf, she'll sometimes even ask the author if they want to be a collaborator on the post, because then it can be a win-win depending on if the author wants that on their own feed.
Our next question comes from Nadia. She has a broad question. She says she lives in the Middle East. She's originally from Pakistan. And she wants to know if it's worth getting contact information for an international publisher or even going the self-published or hybrid publishing route. I think she wants to know if she wants to write a cookbook, and how should she best try to get it published if that's what she ends up doing. And I feel like this might not be the question she should be asking. She should probably be asking, why does she want to write a cookbook, and who is going to buy it, and what is the best way to reach that audience?
Yeah, it's almost like we have some follow-up questions before we can even answer, because is her audience in Pakistan or is it abroad?
Right. Is it for diaspora community, or is it for Pakistanis who are living in the Middle East? I mean, it's a lot of questions. And so that would determine the content of the project and then who publishes it.
Who's the audience? And just something that anybody needs to think about. If you are writing a book and you want it, commercially produced, you need to know, what is the market for this book? Who is going to buy it? And that's something, whether you're going to be self-publishing it, hybrid publishing it, traditionally published, these are all questions you'll have to think about ahead of time. And again, if you do want it traditionally published, we can go back to that lovely idea of platform, building your platform, building your following. Who can't wait to see what you're going to cook next?
Here's a question. I love this one from Catherine. My first cookbook proposal is out on submission. How do you survive? How do you survive this mentally and spiritually?
Oh my gosh, this was from a while ago.
Yeah. So good luck. I hope you have survived it, because this is an old message, but it's just such an important question for all of us that we've all experienced, waiting, wondering, preparing, bracing for rejection.
Gosh, I feel like it's like any kind of liminal space, right? Where it's a lot of probably deep breathing, focusing on the everyday joys, whether that's cooking dinner, not checking your texts obsessively, I guess.
Right.
And I feel so badly, because
I know
when she wrote this, perhaps she was hoping for some support from us.
I know.
and it went into the
abyss.
The abyss. So we do apologize. Yeah.
I do say, I guess one proactive thing you could do is, if you're working with an agent, at least you could tell your agent to feel free to be very forthcoming. Tell them, text me anytime. If you want that play by play, I wouldn't necessarily in the beginning when it first goes out, like harass your agent, but I think you could at least like proactively say like, hey, feel free to keep me in the loop about the play-by-play if you want that.
I love what in a recent episode, Helen Go talked about how she listened to the podcast while she was working on her book, and she was past the proposal phase, but she said just listening to episodes of other people going through the process, it heartened her because, there are moments that are difficult, and just hearing that people got their books done and it will be a book. And so I guess go back and listen to episodes of Everything Cookbooks and hear that you're not alone. You're not the only one who's made this journey.
And be patient. I was rejected for years first.
Yep.
You know? And it doesn't mean that you'll never write that book.
And look at you now.
Right.
The not overnight success.
All of us, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, Catherine, if you're hearing this, I'm sure you're in a very different headspace now. But thank you for the question. Hopefully that helps some other people who might be in that situation. Do we want to move on to Lawrence, who wrote in, loving a recommendation for any cookbook publishing companies for beginners or advice on how to find a literary agent or related information. So this is let's take a macro look. I want to hear from you all. Like if I'm new to this world, like I'm thinking of it as a world, not just a cookbook publishing, but just new to the world of cookbooks. What should I focus on learning first?
I go back to finding books that you like, that feel like the kind of cookbook you might be destined to write. And then I just dive into those acknowledgments and start to connect threads and see who's published them and just see where they were made and how they were made. Learn as much as you can about the backstory of books that are kind of your dream type of project.
Yeah, and I would pay attention to newsletters like Sally Eckes's and Jenna Helwig's so that you understand, what people are looking for in terms of an agent or someone who's looking at a lot of cookbooks. Perhaps there's some way that you can fit into that situation. Also listen to our podcast. In the past, like when you wanted to write a cookbook, remember that gigantic telephone book size thing with all the publishers and agents and stuff, Molly?
Yes.
Way back when?
It was in print.
It was in print.
That's funny. This even predates me, I
think. It was
like
3 inches thick.
Yeah. I never purchased one, but I certainly borrowed one from someone. And
funny.
I did too. I went to the library, I think the LA County Public Library.
And did it have contact information for agents and editors or?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Like a phone directory.
Yeah. Cool.
I think it still exists, but it's not as massive. And I don't know if people use it as much or maybe at all. I think Writer's Digest now publishes it.
Got it. I do think about our episodes start with who, and I guess, I'm unclear because I think I see there's a manuscript written, but are you super, super clear on who that audience is for your book and how you're going to reach them? I do think that you have to be able to answer that question before you can even start looking for an agent. But if you do know who your audience is and how you reach, hopefully you're already reaching them somehow, then yes, with finding an agent. I do have an online class that can go through step by step on the process, but a lot of it is just like what Molly said, is looking at acknowledgments and seeing who people think is the agent. Publishers Marketplace, also you can join for $25 for a month and then cancel it if you need to, and just
they moved it up to $30 a month now.
They did. Okay.
Or you can write it off.
Yes.
Yeah, it still might be money well spent because then you can see all the deals, book deals that have happened, and you can filter, and it's great, great, great research.
Yeah. It's interesting, this question, cookbook publishing companies for beginners. I wouldn't think of it that way because there are small publishing companies, and we've certainly talked to some people that have smaller platforms or more alternative books projects, and they've gone with smaller independent publishers. But I don't necessarily think the term beginner. It may be debut author, sure. But do you know what I'm trying to get at?
No, I was wondering what the meaning of that.
There's not like a kindergarten publishing company. Like they're just, they're smaller platform, certainly where you would start out. But if you're writing a book, you're an expert on something. So that word is like, I'm not sure that's the right way to.
Yeah, it's a matter of you, the author, finding the right fit for your project, the right place, the right home. There is no beginner's place because if you think about the business of this, publishers are not out there to like work with beginners. They're out there to make money and to make significant books or books that are interesting to the public. So as someone starting out, you may think of yourself as a beginner, but you are the expert in your particular subject and you've got something to say.
It might be worth listening to the episode we did with Sarah Billingsley from Chronicle Books because she talks about the different types of authors she works with. We did ask if she ever takes, a chance on a newbie author. She says she does for maybe a very specific single subject book, and that might be a jumping off point for that author to gain more experience and to advance in the field or not. But she also signs some really big deal people who have big platforms, who have a lot of experience in writing recipes and testing recipes and developing a flair. Like when it comes to a cookbook, people go to that cookbook because they want something from it. And saying like, this is a beginner cookbook, what do I want from that? It's different if you're saying it's for beginner cooks.
Right.
That's a different market. But this is essentially a beginner cookbook should probably at this rate be a Substack where you're learning how to write recipes and head notes, and that can be your beginner section. And then you gain traction with that. Publishers will start paying attention to you.
It's a great suggestion.
Let's move on to another question. This one is a little interesting. I'm going to summarize it because it really goes into details about this one person's book project. And I don't want to share all that. That project is private to this listener. But Christina has questions about, can a book work that has fictional elements and recipes and memoir components? Can this kind of work?
So it's a fictional memoir with recipes.
Well, that's a thing because I guess it started off maybe as a novel and then moved into memoir. I think no matter what, you got to either pick memoir or novel. You can't do both in the same work. However, sure, autofiction, you can do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, it seems like that's where those two overlap.
But I think it's more about having a fictional or non-fictional story, a narrative that somehow incorporates recipes into the narrative. They're not separate. Not like, we did Satanya Daker's memoir about her life in Paris, and there were chapters and there were recipes.
Yeah.
They work together.
I always go back to like, where is it going to sit on the shelf?
Yeah.
And even though like physical bookstores are only a percentage of sales, a book still needs to be categorized for search purposes online. How does it get categorized? So it's not to say you can't do something, but there is that market reality of like thinking of where your book is going to be on the shelf. So is it going to sit with the cookbooks? Is it going to sit with fiction? Often some stores will have like a shelf of culinary memoir.
And how much of the book is memoir versus novel? It may just be a very interesting novel with recipes, which is a novel concept, right?
Right. I mean, there are so many genre mixing books,
right?
For sure.
Amanda Cohen's Dirt Candy.
Yeah, for sure. It's just, again, like, where's it going to be put on that shelf?
Yeah. You can do anything if you do it well and it really works. It's just hard,
Right. Right.
It's just hard. And you don't need us as gatekeepers to tell you whether you have permission to do this.
Right.
If you feel you need to do this, you're going to do this project, whether it works or not in a viable sort of marketplace. That's a different conversation.
I mean, Heartland Masala is comic book, graphic illustrations, lot of story, humor, jokes, and really well-tested recipes. It's a solid cookbook. So, and that's a great story because no one gave them permission. It's a mother-son team, and they went their own way. They're self-published, hybrid published. So I think, Kate, your point is right. You can do anything.
You know, if you feel like you need to do it, you can do it. I will bring up, this made me think of a book that is coming out this year called Will This Make You Happy? Stories and Recipes from a Year of Baking by Tanya Bush. It's a book from Chronicle. She is the founder of Cake Scene, and she's also a pastry chef. And I haven't had a chance to read the whole book, but I've dipped into just the first chapter. And wow, it's so well written. And she does have recipes in it. So it is a hybrid baking book / memoir, but definitely I would say it leans more on memoir than it does here's a baking book, if you know what I mean. So it's just a really sweet book and beautifully designed, but it does have some of the traditional elements of a cookbook, like some food photography, some illustrations. You know, the typeface for the recipes is different from the memoir part of the book.
Oh, interesting.
I would say it's a hybrid that has recipes that are tied directly to the story, how she sort of learned how to bake, I think. So,
but like the trim size looks more like a hardcover novel.
Yeah, exactly.
It's almost a hybrid between a hardcover novel and a cookbook because it's bigger than a hardcover novel.
Okay.
It's a trim size I don't see very often in any type of book. So it might be Chronicle flexing its design muscle to do something that will stand out. So the book is Will This Make You Happy? Stories and Recipes from a Year of Baking by Tanya Bush, and it is out March 3rd. So I'm going to have to figure out where they're shelving this book in bookstores. Maybe next time I'm over at Omnivore, take a look. But it's really charming. A lot of work went into the writing.
Yeah.
So we've answered a lot of like big and small questions about cookbook publishing. Are there any aspects of cookbook publishing that we should talk about on this episode that might just kind of tie in all these various questions we've received that went into our spam filter? Any kind of big picture notes that we should leave people with?
I guess any big lessons from this season, right? I still have Brienne Sperber, who does marketing for Clarkson Potter and 10 Speed Press. You know, and we asked her, like, when should you start planning like the marketing and promotion for your cookbook? She's like, before you pitch it, like before you even.
Right.
I think Kate and I were maybe expecting her to be like, you know, a year before the book goes on sale. And she's like, basically, you need to be crystal clear in that proposal. I mean, again, those are bigger publishers. So for that level of publisher, you definitely need that extra clarity. But I do think it's important for anybody because, yeah, you need something to say, but you need somebody who wants to hear what you want to say.
That is an excellent episode to listen to. If you haven't listened to it yet, listeners, or you listened to it, but you didn't take notes, like that's one that I want to re-listen to because there was so much. They shared so much about how they work together with marketing and PR to really launch a book out in the world. And they were so generous with what really goes on.
Yeah. I mean, I think before it used to just be, you know, publicity and you were assigned one person. And then if number of years ago, it was publicity and marketing. You got someone named the marketer. And you're like, what do you do? You know, it's an ever changing thing. And so, you know, definitely you have to go in with a platform, with a tentative plan, and be willing to also be nimble as things change in the market space.
I just listened to a podcast called the Marketing Hustle podcast because the chief marketing officer for Ottolenghi was on it.
Oh, wow.
Talking about how Ottolenghi, how they built their brand over 23 years. And it was a really interesting point. The chief marketing officer said that every single book had to change, had a different strategy in the span of 23 years. That they would be like, oh, let's just do what we did last time because it worked so well. But in the whatever year and a half between projects, it had changed. The landscape had changed. Or let's not do what we did last time because it didn't work, but this time it might work kind of thing. It was just such an interesting, to your point, Andrea, about being nimble and agile and like how quickly the landscape changes. And we'll put a link to that episode because, and what I'm really excited about is the host of the show had never thought about cookbook publishing to have someone on. So I'm really watching to see if she will have a cookbook publisher on. And maybe I should even send Felix's name in to submit it, because I would love to hear, a marketing person interview cookbook marketing publicity team to see what their thoughts are.
Yeah.
Because one of the things about a book is that every single book that's launched into the world is a new product. And that is so incredibly rare, because if you are a toothpaste company, you're not launching, say, 12 new toothpaste flavors every season.
Yeah.
And it's so incredibly different because a publisher, it might be more than 12 books every season. And each one is its own product with its own audience, with its own marketing sort of plan. And it just makes publishing, I think, kind of endlessly fascinating, but also frustrating, because it is sometimes hard to know what's going to work this time. And I've definitely felt, I know how to write a book. And then you start writing another book and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. I got to learn all over again.
Yeah, it's kind of like fashion. Like if you're a fashion designer, a fashion house, then you release a season and you have items that reflect your brand, what you stand for, but also you need to hit different niche market groups, because you have to diversify your portfolio. So, in each one of those things, you may have different kinds of targeted marketing plans and strategies and stuff. And yet it's just like that season, right? And then you're moving on.
It's a very good analogy.
Whereas if you've got a toothpaste you're launching, or that may have endured years of research and millions of dollars, of investment before you're like, the prototypes launch it. So it's a different animal, because books are strangely ephemeral, but you hope that they're not. You hope that you produce a book that's both a front list and as well as a backlist title for the house.
Yeah. And the trickiest thing with books is, if you are a fashion house, at least people will look at those items of clothing based on the brand. I don't think regular cookbook buyers look at, I want to see what 10 Speed is putting out this year.
Correct.
I'm going to pick out books from 10 Speed. It really is, the author has to be the brand.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that is so much harder.
It is.
Yeah, it's a very insidery.
Yeah, no, it is but the house itself,
yes,
is publishing things that they know are true, that make sense to them, right?
Correct.
But it's almost like these strange collaborations then that a fashion house may do, right? But they're like these little like discrete things, and then you release out in the world and you're like, all right, we'll see what happens.
Right. I think this is why, America's Test Kitchen books sell so well. People know the brand. They don't necessarily need to know all the personalities who worked on that book.
Exactly. And I think, and that's something that's highly unique, or Milk Street, which is basically like America's Test Kitchen. You know what you're getting into. Whereas for authors, you may have a brand, but it's not the same as like a brand with an infrastructure. I mean, some people do.
Yeah.
Some people do.
Ina?
Yeah, Ina Garten, Alison Roman.
Ottolenghi. Yeah, for sure.
Right. Any of you have the desire to build your brand into an empire this year?
I've been working hard.
We'll just do it in a year.
Oh, yeah, in a year, because that's all it takes.
That's all it takes. Ottolenghi, 23 years, me, 12 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, these were great chats. We covered a lot of different types of ground in book publishing. And now that our email is back up and running, if there are other topics you'd like us to tackle, send us a message. I do feel bad for everyone I told on who would DM us. I said, just send it to our email.
Yeah. And several were pressed by Kate said this is the best way to get in touch. So we do apologize. And also, we should mention that there are quite a few pitches in there. We'll go through those and review them as we, I guess the basic thing is, yes, we do accept pitches from people who want to be guests on the show, but we don't always respond to everyone, and we consider them, and then we have regular meetings. As we plan our seasons, we're not necessarily responding to pitches. We are planning what we want to talk about, what we think our listeners want to hear about. And then if a pitch or a book idea seems appropriate, we'll reach out. It's not that we're not reading your pitches. We just can't always get back to everybody. But again, we got our email back up and running. So
yes. Yeah. Thank you all for this great conversation. It's always fun to see all your faces.
We'll take a little break and we'll be back in this spring with Season 9.
Season 9.
Oh my God.
Right?
All right.
In the meantime, see you later.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Everything Cookbooks. For more about each episode, subscribe to our newsletter at everythingcookbooks.substack.com. Here are other ways to support the show. Go to everythingcookbooks.com and check out our totes, t-shirts, sweatshirts, and other merch, or buy us a round of coffee. You can also leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Thanks as always to our editor, Abby Cirque-Patella. Until next time, keep on writing, reading, and cooking.